Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Murray, and I'm the chair of UCF's Winter Lunch program. Welcome to our workshop on Divergent Entrepreneurship. So today's goals is really a few things. One is we want you to begin thinking about the difference between divergent and convergent thinking. And Sam is a great person to explain the difference. And then we also want to talk to you about the 12 limitations and the divergent thinking framework. So Sam's going to do that as well. And really, we just want to be able to basically arm you with information so you have more confidence in taking the next step in your entrepreneurial journey. So without further ado, I do want to introduce Sam Tarell, and he is the founder of Divergent U. And Divergent U works a lot with people just like us who are early in the stages of startup or have a passion and interest in entrepreneurship. And he has literally written books on curriculum around divergent thinking. So Sam, I would love to turn it over to you and have you introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk, and I definitely believe we're going to have a lot of engaging dialogue in this discussion. So think of this space as more of a brainstorming. So we're all bringing different ideas into this space, and we're going to be talking about how we can work through some of these ideas with some mental frameworks. So my background, I started my first business called Hoop Brothers when I was 18 years old. Hoop Brothers is a basketball recruiting service. So we help high school basketball players to get scholarships for college. My passion growing up was basketball. I've always been about how do you take creative ideas that are unique and turn them into profitable businesses. And at 18 years old, I started Hoop Brothers really to help my brother get a scholarship for college by providing video services that would support him in getting a scholarship. And so over 8 years, I grew Hoop Brothers into an international organization. We helped over 7,000 high school basketball players throughout the US. We hired over 250 contractors and established a brand presence in over 50 US cities. So I built an executive team and trained them to run the day-to-day operations of Hoop Brothers. I'm still the majority owner in Hoop Brothers, but I'm no longer involved in the day-to-day operations. So about 2 years ago, I was able to get out of the day-to-day process and build Hoop Brothers into a passive income stream for myself. What started as a really small side hustle ultimately grew into a business that was able to generate passive income while impacting my team and supporting others within the organization, as well as thousands of student athletes throughout the country. Since then, for the past 2 years, I've been working with Divergent Thinking and Divergent U. So figuring out how can I help others to do what I did, take a creative idea that's somewhat unique and different and turn it into an income stream for themselves as a business, whether that's a smaller freelancing solopreneur or someone who's looking to raise capital and build a billion-dollar company. The thinking process of how to solve problems is the same. And so I ended up writing a curriculum, as Kelly mentioned. This is called the 12 Limitations. It's a 3-month program that we offer. We've had 50 graduates go through this program in the past 2 years, and we'll talk a little bit about what some of the frameworks in this are and how it works. But generally speaking, the 12 limitations are the things that could hold us back, what limits us from bringing our ideas into reality. And so we're looking at what are the end points and how do we reverse engineer each of those to overcome the limitations so that we can advance our ideas forward. Convergent thinking is thinking to a set point. So you see on the left, the convergent is multiple variables that are pointing inward to one singular correct solution. Very simple example of this is something like 2 + 2 = 4. That's multiple variables. It's pointing to a correct answer. That will always be the correct answer. And there's no debate about that. So a standardized test is something that we can use to teach or test convergent thinking because a standardized test has a correct answer. On the contrary, if you look at divergent thinking, Divergent thinking is starting from a question and expanding outward to multiple creative and unique ideas. So what we just asked was a divergent question. What do you believe about goals? There is not a correct answer to that. Everyone had their own idea of what that is. Some of them were similar. We talked a lot about growth and realistic and keeping focused and how to focus those goals on having a large goal and then wiring it back. But ultimately, there is not a correct answer to that question. And so divergent thinking is the ability to creatively come up with answers to questions that may not have a correct answer. There was a case study done by Breakpoint and Beyond. They tested over 200,000 students, starting at a kindergarten level and then going through the graduation of high school. And they tested their ability to divergent think. They tested them in divergent thinking genius level. The way they do this is they ask a question like, how many uses can you think up for a paperclip? And so if you can answer 20 answers for how many uses you can think up for a paperclip, those are your creative ideas, you're at a certain level of divergent thinking. If you answer 200 answers, then you're at a genius level of divergent thinking, right? So when they tested students in kindergarten level, 98% of them tested at a genius level in divergent thinking, 98%, which much more than the majority were geniuses in their ability to come up with creative ideas. By 10 years old, the number dropped from 98% to 32% that were testing at a genius level in divergent thinking. By 15 years old, the number drops to 10% testing at a genius level. And by 18 plus years old, only 2% of students are testing at a genius level in divergent thinking, their ability to come up with creative ideas. And so there's a massive gap in divergent education, in the ability to come up with creative ideas, because much of what we do in school is about testing the right answer and getting to the convergent correct answer. We don't have a whole lot of opportunities in school to explore those creative ideas that maybe don't have a correct answer. And so what we're going to do today is create a space that is not a right answer. We're brainstorming openly. And so there's nothing that we'll go over today where you have to feel pressure to get the answer correct, because there's not a correct answer. We'll be talking openly, and everyone's opinion and everyone's perspective contributes to that. And so we'll learn together from each other's perspectives. The next thing that I want to go over with you is the divergent thinking model. And so this is a model that we created. So this goes back to the question that we asked: what makes a goal healthy versus unhealthy? And, we said mission, the why. Another word we could use for that is values. If your goals are not aligned with your values, if you're sacrificing your personal values to achieve your goals, then that's unhealthy for both you and the society at large. And so the word mission, when it's not aligned with your mission, when it's not achievable, someone said, when it's not, when you don't know why you're attempting this goal, that makes it somewhat unhealthy for you. So we start with values. Values is individual to each person. What are your individual values? So an exercise that you can do on this is start with that question: what are my values? And write down 5 words. What is most important to me internally? Before we think about goals, before we think about what we want to achieve, what won't I sacrifice to achieve it? So we're starting with ourself first and discovering what are our values. Second to that is our goals. What is it that we hope to accomplish? What is it that we want to achieve? So once we know who we are in our value section, then we can start to focus on what we want. What is it that we hope to accomplish? And then create a process on how to achieve that goal. And so a lot of times when I work with students, a question that comes up is, what should I do? We have a lot of opportunities in our life, and there's limitless options for what we can spend our time and energy doing. And so a lot of people are stuck on this question of, what should I be investing my time in? And to me, that's process. What should I do is what you're focusing on. So before you think about what should I do, you have to start with who are you and what is it that you want. And once you've established clear values on who you are and clear goals on what you want, then you can start to come up with a creative process to achieve that goal. The reason this is called the divergent thinking model is because there's not a right answer to any of these. There's not a right answer to what your values should be. There's not a right answer to what your goals should be. And there's not a right answer to how you go about achieving those goals. This model allows you to really make decision-making easy. Once you have clarity on who you are and what your goals are, then you can come up with creative process. And again, it requires divergent thinking. There's not a right way. We have to brainstorm and come up with ideas. This is the 12 limitations framework. So these are everything we just spoke on. What can hold you back from achieving your goal? On the left side, you got the foundation of your beliefs. If you don't believe it's possible, you won't even try. And so we have to start with saying what is possible and how can we push that belief of what is possible. The idea of realistic. How do we know where is the line on this is realistic versus this is unrealistic? Part of that is in our beliefs. Part of that is in a lot of these resources that we have. But if we don't believe we can push that, we're not going to attempt it. So we start there. Second is the motivation. So staying motivated, keeping ourselves motivated by, we can be motivated by different things, not just the external things, but the internal. Are you motivated more by stress and pressure, or are you motivated more by joy and contribution? Because you can be motivated by both. So where do you find that motivation? Limitation of rules, like we talked about, the laws could absolutely hold you back from attempting what you want to attempt. Awareness, so location, you could be stuck at where you are. COVID, I think, stopped a lot of us in what we wanted to achieve because of location. I can speak on that personally. Hoop Brothers, my first business is a basketball company. We do live events. So when COVID initially hit last year, we went from doing 8 events a weekend to 0. And for 3 months, we had no revenue. So we almost went bankrupt last year because our expenses didn't go anywhere, but our revenue dropped into nothing. And that was limited by the location of, you couldn't go to physical events to participate in a basketball event, which is where we filmed. So that absolutely can hold you back. The culture, as we spoke on, that's the voices of those around you. Or the society at large, but there's the micro culture, right? The people that are your top 5 people in your life. We've all heard that expression. You are who you surround yourself with, your 5 closest friends. So there's that immediate culture of how you operate with your close group, but there's also the culture of society at large, your city, your school, your state, your country, and the online cultures that we interact in. Those all have an impact on how we move forward with our decisions. And then clarity. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you want? Do you know when the right time is to act on that decision? Strategy. Do you have the money? Do you have the connections? Do you have the time? And then last is the execution. So knowledge or information, talent, and health, personal health, and the skill that we have. It's extreme example, right? The limitation of health is death, and that's something that we cannot overcome. So I do think there is a way to overcome it with our ideas, where our ideas can outlive us, even if we become physically or mentally unable to advance what we're trying to accomplish. There's ways to build systems that will continue to advance it, even if we're not able to. So there's ways to work around it, but ultimately, yeah, there is, to some degree, it's not possible to overcome that limitation of health. The other one that I think is pretty impossible to overcome is the rules, the laws. There's, you can always find a way to change where you're located, but ultimately there are rules of society, there are laws that we have to function within. And if we're not functioning within those rules or laws, then that can obviously stop us. If we want to rob a bank, right? That could limit us from accomplishing our goals. But it's something that we could attempt, but I think ultimately that would be a limit there that is not possible to overcome, right? So I think this is a very bright group. I think you all have a lot of potential. And so I'm very excited that I got to share this with you. Again, feel free to visit divergent-u.com. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, it's just Sam Tarell. And then email me, samtarell@gmail.com, if you have any interest, or message me on LinkedIn if you would be curious to learn more about what we do. And again, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Svetlana, for having me for the session. I appreciate all of you coming out. This was a very engaged group. So I appreciate all of your time, and I hope you have a really good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. This was fantastic. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for your engagement.